hopefully someone will tell me in a second if they can see my screen.
Yep, perfect.
Woo! Go tech. All right, so this course creation class is about structuring your content. I'm aiming to do one every Wednesday on a variety of different subjects. I haven't decided next Wednesdays yet, nor have I put up the page for it. So if, as we go through this, you realize there's something you really want to learn or talk about, drop it in the comments or send me an email afterwards, and I will schedule it for one of the upcoming course creation classes, because there's lots to talk about. And this one just happens to be on structuring content. So today, you will learn how to break down your big topic into smaller, tiny little pieces. You'll learn the three great components, or the three components to a great course structure. We're going to talk about making content easy to consume, and we're going to talk about how much content to include, that magical how much is the right amount thing, because that seems to be a question I get asked a lot, and I always want to answer with how long is a piece of string, but it's not the right answer. So this is what we're going to do today. I think most of you on the call probably have seen me or know me or have met me. But if you don't, I've been teaching for far longer than I wish to admit now. I counted yesterday when I was writing the slides and realized that I've been training face-to-face for at least 16 years, and that made me feel really old. I've also been writing course content for 10 years and developing either face-to-face courses or online courses. So I've been around long enough to learn some stuff. I've run other businesses as well, so both e-commerce and events businesses. And I say that just because when I build courses for other people, I think they assume that I just build one type of course, but the truth is that there are lots of types of courses that can work for lots of types of businesses. Yeah, and if you didn't know, my name sounds like a lunchtime. Ugh, I can't believe I became a sandwich. When did that happen? Stupid. So that's me. It's not going to be one of those all about Sam's, because we're done with that. So what I am going to say though is that this is about doing and not about watching. So as we go through, if you haven't done so already and you're a pen and paper kind of a person, grab yourself a pen and paper. I even have one to write stuff down as we go along if I remember something. And the best way to get started on doing your course or having a course is to quit talking about it and begin doing it. The internet attributes that to Walt Disney, and I'm not sure if that is actually Walt Disney, but anyway, so says the internet, so it must be true. So let's start at the beginning and talk about the three key components to a great course. And I'm going to say this with a completely straight face, no, I'm not. It needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I know that sounds really simple, but you'll see most of the time when I'm talking to clients and people building a course, they think about the middle, because the middle is where all the stuff goes. That's the content. So that's the PDFs and the videos and all that stuff that they create, the content. But we always seem to forget about the beginning and the end. Think of it like a sandwich, right? The filling's great, the middle stuff is awesome, but if it doesn't have a top and a bottom, then it all just falls apart and you don't have a sandwich anymore. And it's the same with your course. So if you haven't done so already, take a moment to really think about the beginning and the end of your course. So the beginning is a welcome section. Now this includes pre-content. So when they purchase from you, this is the stuff they get right away. So before the course starts live. And this is where you start to build the experience and you start to make them feel warm and happy and welcomed. That's the stuff that comes in the email that they first get as a response. That might be a welcome PDF explaining some ground rules. It might be explaining where they get to access the course and the content. It's all that sort of stuff. It's also the very first thing they get when they log in. So if they land on a welcome page or a dashboard, all of that sets the scene and begins the course. Yet that seems to be such a last minute thought for people, that welcome stage. So really think about that beginning for a course. If I'm running a face-to-face class, that's where I set ground rules for people. And we really talk about sort of behavior to be expected in a classroom. I don't teach kids, but you know, it's toilet breaks and when's morning tea and how to put your hat. No, but it's that sort of stuff. But you can do that in an online setting as well. So it's setting the boundaries for how the group works, what's appropriate to say, what's not appropriate to say. How often will you be in there answering questions? You know, should they expect a response at midnight on a Tuesday, or will you be asleep? Do you have a team to help you when you are asleep? It's all of that sort of stuff that really sets the expectations for the course. And if you don't do that bit well, what's going to happen is that they're going to end up possibly disappointed or misled or not sure about what to say or what's going on, simply because you haven't told them. So I'm going to take a couple of secs. I'm going to unmute you guys if you have a moment and you want to ask something. And I want you to tell me, if you want, what you want to or what you think you should have in your welcome section to really make your participants feel comfortable with your content. So have a think about it and let me know what you think you would need or what you should have in your welcome sections for your course. And you are muted, so if you do want to yell out, you'll have to unmute yourself. Just as a warning. And while you're doing that, I've just realized my phone isn't on silence. So let's do that too.
It's Lyndall here.
Hello, Miss Lyndall.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm thinking people that are going to be doing this course might be feeling really overwhelmed about starting a podcast. So I'm thinking probably a really good way to do that would be to have a short video, welcoming them, maybe explaining all of this stuff, and then just possibly having it as a PDF, 1-page, 2-page document just so they can access it later too, but mainly video just to try and sort of break that ice and put them at ease a little bit.
Definitely. And even just saying that it's okay to feel overwhelmed, like if you recognize that feeling and that thought and say, look, I get it. Okay. And you can even use story there too. You know, when I started podcasting, I was overwhelmed. You know, there's so much to think of and so many things, so many moving parts. And I get that. So I want to make this as easy as possible for you. You can use that as part of your story and your process even. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah, nice.
Sam, I've got a question.
Miss Shari, question away.
I'm thinking of doing small workshops rather than a larger course. So individual topics, only like at quite a low price point because it's for parents. In terms of when you're talking about support boundaries, do you think it's fair to just chuck everyone into a big private Facebook group where they can ask questions relevant to the course that they're taking or the workshop that they're taking, rather than separate support groups for each?
Yes. So separate support groups for each would drive you insane.
That's what I'm thinking.
The admin is just ridiculous. So rather than chuck them in, I would definitely offer the group. So if they don't feel comfortable in that kind of a group setting, then I wouldn't force them. But again, that's where the boundaries come really important then. So what you will say, and it might be in your rules or your about section for your group or whatever, is just lay the groundwork and say this group is for people taking any of my workshops. Because of that, people will be discussing different stuff in here. This is what's appropriate. This is what's not appropriate. Just tell them. And I think that's the biggest thing. Same with Lyndall and for any of the other guys on the call, is that just make it really clear up front. As long as you tell them, then it doesn't matter.
Well,
just make it clear.
So for $27, they're not going to get one-on-one support.
No, and that's fine. But also, you'd be surprised. I've seen in another group, and I'm going to keep it swift because I know I've said to you guys 30 minutes. I've seen in another group, and I was really sad about it. I saw someone say that they'd bought a course, and then they got an email saying that there wasn't one-on-one support. It was a $27 course. And they were just ripping the course creator apart. How dare they not offer support? And, you know, I paid for it and I want my refund. And I think it's really sad because if someone went out and purchased a book for $27, you don't expect to be able to email the author and get one-on-one support from the author of the book. But there are some really high expectations for courses.
Yeah.
And it's because the word course is such a broad word and now has been used to cover so many different types of facilitation. So if you are going to offer a certain kind of thing, and that might be lots of support or no support or somewhere in the middle, just explain the process, and where possible, explain it during the sales process. Don't wait until after they've joined, because that's how you get that cold feet or people wanting refunds. And it's not because it's bad, it's just because it's not what they expected. So just put it on your sales page. You know, as part of this, you'll get access to a group of things for everyone participating in the workshops. This is what you'll get. This is how you use it. Just tell people. Cool. All right. So next thing you need is your meaty middle bit, and we'll talk about that more in a sec. And then at the bottom, you need the base of your sandwich, which is the end or the wrap up. This is just as important as the beginning, and again gets like the least amount of thought. So what you want to do is put a real clear end process on your course. It's the same as when you go to a face-to-face workshop. I don't know if you've ever been there and you go through all the content, you get this lovely warm feeling, and it gets to the end of the day and it just kind of finishes and everyone's a bit awkward and milling around and no one really knows whether to say goodbye and do you hug and do you not hug, and some people leave early and there's no clear end process. So it's the same with your online course. What you want is not just for the content to finish on week 6 or week 8 and that be it, but you want a clear process for the finish. So that might be things like a video saying goodbye and explaining to them what their next steps are. Next steps might be services that you offer. So it might be a group they can join, might be a VIP program, it might be a longer term mastermind or support program. It might be buying your one-on-one services, it could be anything. It might be that you send them to other people's courses. So maybe that's what you've done. That's as far as you go, but you've got a great affiliate or a friend who runs some really cool stuff. It might be saying that that's it for now, but here's how they apply that in the real world. So if you were teaching a course on finding a job, now's the time when they go out and find the job. So it's just making it super clear what comes next, but you want to leave them feeling really confident as well. So this is the point where you can have a video congratulating them on that process. You can use the group to really go in and sort of touch base with people. If you've had some participants who've been working really hard, who've been in the group really often, you'll know them, you'll see their name pop up all the time, then now's the time to congratulate them, to say thank you, to really clear off that process. So I want to make sure that you think about this before you just chuck a course out there. Is the end for you and for them is really important in making sure that everyone feels like there was a defined finish and that they know what to do next. In terms of recency, this is the bit that leaves them with a good feeling after the course. You can have the best intro, but if you have a shitty finish, then it's going to ruin all of that hard work you put in beforehand. So this is the bit, honestly, that is most important for getting raving reviews and testimonials, because this is how you leave them feeling at the end of the process. So have a think about that. If you're the kind of course that issues certificates, that's why you do this. If you have a breakup party, that's why you do this. But it's all those bits, those other bits that go with it. So I'm going to take you on through into breaking it down. So that meaty bit in the middle, obviously there's lots of stuff that goes in there and you need to break it into bits. Some of you will have been through this process before, but the first thing you're going to do is break that really large topic, which is your course, down into, or really large thing, which is your course, down into topics. Those topics, some people will call them modules, are like chapters in a book. So they're broad, they're big. They've got all of the stuff relating to a certain subject matter in there. If your course is the kind of thing that gets taught in order, then you'll have topic 1, which will be about the thing they have to do at the beginning, topic 2, the next thing they do. If you've got a process that doesn't need to go in order, then it might not be quite so important which topics go where, but it's worth thinking about taking them through a process. Each of those topics are going to be broken down into little itty bitty chunks. I'm going to talk more about the size of the chunks in a sec. But for each of those chunks, I strongly recommend that you work through this process. So there's a couple of key things you need to include in here. I say a couple, it's actually 5. You're going to teach them the content. Funnily enough, your chunk needs to include the stuff that you want to share with them. So as Lyndall was saying, she might share PDFs and videos. This is where you put the stuff that they need to know. As part of that process, you're going to share a story. So people learn through stories, always have, always will. If you ever doubt the value of a story, look at the turnover of Disney and tell me that there isn't money in a good story. So share a story. Now, this could be your story. As Lyndall mentioned as part of her welcome, it might be that when you started, you felt really overwhelmed. That's part of your story. It might be the success story of another client or a participant. It might be a well-known story. So for example, if you were talking about protecting boundaries or toxic family relationships right now, you might make comment on the Meghan and Harry stuff that's going on because it's timely and it's something that people might relate to. So you want to share some sort of story and show people how it's relevant and how it works. This doesn't need to be separate from your content. They can be intertwined, because what you're doing is showing a real life example of the content that you're teaching and how it works for them. You're giving them something they can relate to. The next thing you're going to do is make them do it. So for every little chunk of information you deliver, I think they should have an action point or an implementation point where they go away and actually do the stuff. If you get them to implement little bit by little bit as they go, it's going to be much less overwhelming than if you just leave it all to the end, even leaving it to the end of a topic. So for every piece of information you deliver, there should be an action point or an implementation point for every video, for every PDF. And we say that because we want to break it down into teeny tiny baby steps. Because if they have to watch 3 videos and then go away and do something, it's just going to build up. It's too much stuff. Whereas if they watch 1 video, do 1 tiny action, watch 1 video, do 1 tiny action, it's going to be a lot easier. So make them go away and do it. Next step then is to give feedback on that process. So part of having a great course is the opportunity for feedback. Now, not all courses include this, and I get that. Especially now, you'll often buy a course where you just buy content online and you don't get the opportunity to get the support you need. You might not be able to submit your work for feedback, but especially if you've got a higher end course that sells for a higher value, or you've got a topic that's kind of complicated. I've seen Beck is on the call. Beck does websites. Websites are the kind of thing where people are going to want feedback because they're going to get stuck and they're going to need help. So then a little bit the same with podcasts. I'm sure that people are going to get stuck and need feedback. So this feedback bit, it could be really broad. It might be that they come to a group and they just explain how they went, and you can give support and feedback on the comments thread. It might be that they actually get to submit their work for review or assessment of some sort. It might be that they get one-on-one feedback, and as part of a higher end program, you give one-on-one coaching calls and they get to submit their work and get feedback that way. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how you decide to do it because it's your course and it will be different, but you want to make sure that that feedback process is in there because this is where they learn, right? It's all well and good to do it, but how do you know if you did it well or if you didn't do it well if no one ever tells you? So that feedback process is a really important part of the learning process. At the end, then, you can provide any additional resources, and I put this at the end for a reason because we don't want to overwhelm them by giving them 6 or 7 different things to go away and read when what we really want them to do is start doing. If they don't start doing straight away, they're not going to do. They're going to put it off as long as possible. And I know that because I do that. So before we move on any further, because I am processing really quickly today, I want to see if anyone has any questions on breaking the stuff out into topics or chunks, or on any of the components of a chunk. So if you do, unmute yourself and yell out. How do you feel about breaking each little bit of your subject matter down into content, story, feedback, all that kind of stuff?
Hi, Jen here.
Hi, Jen.
So I guess the rule of thumb from what I've been hearing is keep your video content short, about 3 minutes. What I find is, yes, it's very hard to keep it within 3 minutes. And then it means that you've got to do more of them.
Yeah.
So when is it that the whole video thing becomes too much for people and that people, just start, phasing out and they just don't want to watch a video? They'd much rather, have a really simple checklist or whatever. Are we getting into a situation where it's information overload, and how do we manage that?
Possibly. It will depend a lot on your audience, and you're actually going to lead me really nicely into my next point. So we'll talk about all of this in a roundabout way. Bear with me 1 sec. Brendan, I can see you unmuted yourself as 2. Hold on for 1 second. I'll come back to you. My next question is how much content you should include. And Jen, this leads to your 3-minute video. So, hello, noisy Brendan. The question I always have, Jen, and this is for you, 3 minutes is really short for a video. In fact, I think it's often too short, probably, to get a good point across or good learning content. So the question becomes, how much time do they have? For my audience, I find I've got about 10 minutes for the video, honestly. Past the 10-minute mark is a bit hard, but I have got that 8 to 10 minutes to get something, because if they've sat down to press play on the video, my audience, and you can see from my website statistics even, are like 80% desktop users. They're not mobile users. And it's because they're working and they've allocated time to learning from me as part of their work time. So they've sat down at their desk or in their office, they're on their laptop. They've got 10, 15 minutes to watch the video. They've allocated time for it. If your audience is, say, busy mums or on the couch on their mobile, maybe you've got 3 minutes. But yes, the question really becomes, for how much content should you include and for how long are your videos, is how much time do they actually have? Because what we want to do is build content that fits in with their life and their time, and that will vary for each of you. So my question, Jen, is how much time do they have? Because 3 minutes is very short. And do they have more than that?
Yeah, maybe that almost needs to be something that goes into the welcome section then, to prepare them for what they can expect, and to basically seek their permission that they need to be committed to dedicating, like you're right, like what's 3 minutes or what's half an hour if whatever it is that they've paid to be part of or that they've agreed to be part of is important to them.
That's it. And I think that we're fed this story that people are busy, they don't have time, which is very true. But they do have time. Their time is just elsewhere. So for all of us, we always pick during our day where we schedule our time. Like, what are we spending our time on and what are we doing with it? And sometimes that choice is conscious and sometimes it's much more subconscious. And we find ourselves drawn to things without realizing why. But there is time there. They just have to decide whether your video is worthy of that time, right? It's a choice. So what we need to make sure is that we're delivering content that is valuable to them, that is going to help them move towards their goal, that is focused. So we want to reduce the amount of filler and fluff and really make sure that we're teaching them exactly the steps they need. And if that's the case, they'll watch the videos because they're useful. On that note though, as a participant, I don't like video. Like I don't enjoy watching video. I find myself flicking through videos just to get to the bit I want to hear. Yesterday there was an 8-minute video on YouTube I was watching. I skipped straight to 4 minutes 40 because that's where he started talking about the one thing I wanted to know. I didn't care about the rest. And as Lyndall mentioned, we were talking about including PDFs and downloads. I'm a big fan of putting at least the key points under the video, but if not, maybe not a direct transcription because we all know that you tend to waffle a bit in video, but at least an overview or part of the script or the information so that they don't have to watch the video if they don't want to, but they can skim read the content and take what they need. And that way they can be as intentional with their time as they want to, and they can watch the video if it serves them. And if they don't need it, they don't have to.
That's good. And I really like what you've just said about avoiding the fluff. I can't stand the videos where it's all like, oh, hi, how you going? And oh my God, I just switch off straight away.
Yeah, it's fine if it's part of a sales process, perhaps because you're trying to build rapport with an audience, but once you get to paid content, it doesn't necessarily serve its purpose anymore. So I think it's about using the right content at the right time. Does that kind of help with your
it's good
timing question? Awesome.
Can I add something to that?
Yes,
what you were just saying. I also think that if you Google how to strip the audio out of a video and provide it as an audio link as well, that's how I like to consume content. Obviously, I'm a little biased on the audio front, but I will quite often listen to, so if my kids are at a swimming lesson and I can't, or I'm not watching a video, I will quite often listen to the lesson if it's provided in an audio link as well, which, as I say, it might seem technical, but it's actually quite easy to strip the audio out and just put that link there too. So that might be an option.
And some platforms do it automatically. This is being recorded in Zoom, and at the end when it converts, I'll get a file and I get the video file and just the audio file separately as well. So yeah, definitely possible. Thank you, Lyndall. And a good point. So
really good. Thanks, Lyndall.
Yeah, all of this, and I will always say, it always depends on your audience. I think so often we're taught that we should just build things to a specific structure or there's a right way to do things. But the truth is, and especially with course content, there isn't a right way. It really depends on what course you're building and who you're building it for, because what we want to deliver is deliver the right thing for them. And that will change. Like, I mean, we're taught that, it has to be short, it has to be sweet, it has to be 3 minutes. But you know what? People study at uni online now. They do 3 to 4 year degrees fully online. They're dedicating hours of their time to watching lectures and downloading study notes. And, they had the focus to do that. So it doesn't have to be short, but it has to be purposeful, and they have to understand what they're getting into, I think. That's a big part of the difference. Now, Brendan, you had a question. Well, you unmuted yourself at some point. So unmute yourself again for me.
Rightio. Just coming back to our chunk section.
Yes. You
had the 5 areas there. Teach free to provide additional resources. If you've got and I'm just thinking through possible things, and one thing which came to mind was budgeting. You've got income, expenses, liabilities, which could be 3 chunks in themselves. And and I'm thinking about it, I teach it, share a story, make them do it around each one, but then probably combine it all back together again to give feedback, provide additional resources.
Yeah, that can be definitely.
Is it right to do that type of thing, mix and match?
Yeah, I definitely advise doing the make them do it for each chunk, but you're right, the feedback could be done later. So it's like going to class each day, right? You go and you listen to the teacher and you do some work. She might not take all your work in until the end of the week and mark it. So that give feedback and that assessment process can definitely happen a bit later. The only thing I would say is don't leave it too long, because if there's something that they don't understand or that they've got completely wrong, you want to catch that sooner rather than later. So for your example, that 3 chunks and then the feedback is fine. But for example, I wouldn't do like 10 chunks and then give feedback, because if they got something wrong in chunk 1 or chunk 2, like they've wasted their time. And that's not fair on anyone. So yes to you, just use it thoughtfully is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
No, thanks.
All good. So I promised that this class would be 30 minutes, and that gives us 3 minutes. I am so sleep deprived. I had to check. I was holding up 3 fingers then. That gives us 3 minutes left. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about is I'm going to open the board to any questions in general. I'm going to ask if there's anything that you want for next time. And I'm going to say that if you haven't done so already, I have a free group that talks about this sort of stuff as well. So you can just search Content into Courses on Facebook, and you can come and join us if you're not already, though I think quite a few of you are. Come and join us in there. So open question time. 1, is there anything you'd like to know? And 2, if I ran another one of these, is there a subject matter that you'd specifically like to talk about or learn more about? That's the question.
Jen here. I love what I've observed in your, I guess your sharing across social media is that you know quite a bit about a number of course platforms.
Yeah.
That's what I guess has always, it's always stumped me. It's like, which one? And I've not actually done any bloody thing because I keep getting confused about which one. So it would be awesome for me if you could perhaps just do a synopsis of some of the key things that are used.
Yeah.
And that way, while I'm listening to you, it will help me to perhaps just, I don't know, think about my own scenario and what might work best for me.
So what I will probably do is do a full class on it, because there's a lot to take into account. The reason that I talk a lot about different platforms is because, again, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I know a couple of people out there are promoting. So especially if they're affiliates with a platform, they teach how to build something and then they send all of their students to one thing. Teachable, for example, which is great, but if Teachable doesn't suit you or suit your content, then it's not so great. So that's part of the reason why I talk about a lot of different ones, is because they do different things and they serve different purposes, and there definitely isn't a right solution for everyone. There's a couple of questions I always ask first. 1 is, do you want to store your content and run your course on your own website, or are you happy for it to be hosted somewhere else? And part of the thing you need to think about with that is the user experience. So if it's your big sort of 8-12-week program, thousands of dollars, it's your big branded experience, then you probably want that on your own website, because you want to control the experience and the branding. And the moment you start to use another platform, you lose a little bit of that control, especially when it comes to branding and look and feel. So that's part of the question, is do you want it on your platform or not on your platform? And then once you've made that decision, you can start to look at the kind of functionality and features you need, and then we can talk about which ones are probably right for you. So there's a lot to go into it, and I don't have a right answer straight away, but had you thought about whether you want it on your website or whether you're happy to host offsite?
Well, yeah, I think I've come down that I think I do want it on my website, but I to be honest, other than the cost and being sort of locked into something like a cloud-based one, like a Teachable or whatever, I guess I just have to understand a little bit more about the benefits of self.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll do a quick rundown of that now, and then what I'll do is I'll put together a full class on it, maybe for next week.
I'm happy for you not to do a rundown if I'm just mindful that other people have got questions and stuff, but happy to wait.
We'll do a super quick rundown. On your website, pros, it's yours. Cons, takes longer to set up and it's more expensive. Off your website, pros, it's cheaper to get started, but the costs can mount in the long term because you might have to pay monthly. And cons, pros. Which way around am I now? Can someone give me some sleep, please? Babies. Pros of being offsite, it's quick to get started. Cons, it can build up expenses over time, and it's not your brand and it's not your experience. They're really the 2 biggest things, is cost and timing. because it does take time to build a course into the back end of your website. There is a bit more tech involved. If you don't feel comfortable doing that tech, then you need to pay someone else to do it for you. And even if you do feel comfortable doing your tech, the plugins to go on your website will be more money up front than you'll pay in the first monthly fee for a platform like a Teachable or something else. So with a platform like Teachable, for example, you can get started for $29. That's what your first month's worth of fees will cost. Whereas if you're putting a plugin on your website, something like LearnDash, you'll probably be looking at about $139 US. And that's just the plugin. That doesn't include any of the time for setup. So for a lot of my clients, that's the first thing, is budget. I don't like to make all my decisions solely based on budget, but I understand it's a factor for a lot of people. And the second thing is, how comfortable do you feel doing the tech? So if you're really comfortable with your website and happy adding plugins, go for gold. If you're not, then you need to consider that you're going to need to pay someone else to help you, and that's going to be a big part of your process and your budgeting as well.
Awesome. Thanks.
That's probably my advice to start with.
Yeah.
Anyone else before I move on and wrap this up? Questions, comments, or feedback?
Yeah, can I just ask it might be something that you cover in the future as well. I agree with Jen, like some of the a lesson on how to deliver is probably where I've been getting stuck, and even including in that, like you've said to me, and it changed my whole way of thinking, is you don't have to do a video to PowerPoint slides. So that can even sort of take that away. So I'd even have a lesson that talks about how you could deliver. So face to video, slides, what could you include in each of those chunks? I know you touched on it today.
Yep.
And I have one question, is about what do you think about lifetime access, and whether you keep, so for example, I was thinking about doing podcast courses where I would add people into a small group when it's going, and then do I add them into like another bigger group, or would I put them into my big group that's never done my course afterwards for support?
Okay. No, that's all right. A couple of questions in there. Lifetime access. Be careful, because the word lifetime is kind of misleading. Ultimately, it means lifetime of the product, but you've got to be really clear on that. I honestly prefer to have a bit of a boundary on access, partly because you can never predict what happens in the future. So if in 12, 24 months time, your life changes, you decide to leave the world of podcasting, whatever, you might not want to pay for continuous hosting to keep this course online, or all the monthly fees to keep it running. So I put a time frame on it. The other reason I do that is because the problem with having unlimited access to something is you've got no reason to have to go and do it. So you can keep putting it off and be like, oh, I'll look at that next month or next year or whenever that might be. So if you're going to give them longer access to the content, I'd put a time frame on it. That could be 12 months. Like it could be a whole year worth. Maybe the course runs for 6 weeks, but then they get the rest of the year to go through the content. But I just find that it's clearer for everyone involved if there is an end point. As for where they go afterwards, it's up to you. I do like the idea of having a support group for people who've paid money to be part of your process, just because I think it sets a different kind of framework for the kind of questions they can ask and what they feel comfortable discussing, and how much advice you feel comfortable giving in response to questions. Whereas if they get chucked back into your free for everyone group, then like, where do you put the boundaries around what support you give and what questions you answer and that kind of a thing. So just consider what you want to give after the course and whether you want that to happen back in your group with everyone else.
Okay, thanks.
Miss Beck, you've unmuted yourself, so let's finish off with you for the day.
Okay, I would actually like to know the options for offering support. I mean, I know everybody tends to go with I'm going to give you a Facebook group, but what are the other options? Because I do know that a lot of people, or maybe not a lot of people at this point, but people are starting to move away from Facebook. And I don't want, to be stuck on a platform that I don't own and have any control over.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I've had a discussion in the past with some people about forums, and I think that forums are going to come back into their own. You know how they were really cool in the beginning of the internet? Like
I miss forums, honestly.
Forums were the thing. I think we might see a revival of forums, honestly. for this point that, you know, we want to draw them away from social media. The problem is that people spend a lot of time on social media, so they're there anyway, and it's easy. I noticed that this round, ConvertKit are running a live challengey coursey thing, and they've built a forum into their platform, and that's where they're running things, and they're giving people bonus points for participating in their forum, and people with the highest amount of points from participation and engagement in the forum get certain prizes, and some of those are cash prizes. So they're highly incentivizing people coming away from Facebook and participating in their platform instead. So
gamification would be another good thing to look at too. I don't know if that's outside your sphere, but yeah, that'd be something I'd be interested in.
Yeah, but you're right. Facebook at the moment has just become the go-to option, but it's not right for every audience. Forums are hard work. I have had a client in the past, we hosted a LinkedIn group. I mean, it's the same problem, just a different platform. But if your audience isn't on Facebook, a Facebook group's a terrible idea. So it really, at the moment, it comes back to where is your audience hanging out. But I do get the desire to move away from Facebook in the long run. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up there because we've gone a little bit over time. Thank you so much for giving me feedback and some ideas for next time. So the theory is that these will run in Brisbane. I don't know where everyone else is. These will run every Wednesday morning at 9:30 for me, except where I've got one in a couple of weeks coming up where I'm already pre-booked for that time slot. But these will be fairly regular. The topics will change intermittently, and we'll talk about lots of different things. But if you found it useful, what I would really love for you to do is either come over to the group and just tell other people it was useful, because that'd be really handy for me, or share with your audience and tell them that it was really handy. That would be lovely. If in doubt, come and join the group and have a chat with us there. And I'd like to thank you all for participating today. Have a wonderful day, and I hope it involves far less bodily fluids than my morning has. A long story. Goodbye.